We see it every day. The friction, the noise. The baby boomers are blamed for breaking the past. Millennials are accused of ruining the present. Gen Z? They're busy reinventing a future we don't even recognize yet. But there is a specific group that almost always slips under the radar. They don't make much noise. They don't get defensive. They aren't desperately chasing the next big trend. They simply exist. This is Generation X, those born between the mid-60s and the very start of the 80s. They are the quiet hum of a massive engine room, unseen, unheard, but they are the only reason the ship stays on course. They are the colleagues who finish the job without complaining, the parents who skip the long-winded lectures, the individuals who laid the groundwork for the digital world, without narrating every single step of their journey on social media. And here is the fascinating part. From a psychological perspective, they might be the most misinterpreted group currently alive. Generation X was the first demographic to have autonomy thrust upon them at a very young age. It wasn't a lifestyle preference. It was a basic requirement. Picture it, a 7-year-old child trekking back from school, alone, sliding a key into a silent apartment, knowing they would be solo for several hours. No tracking apps, no smart cameras, no instant messages checking if they made it through the door. You managed on your own. You prepared your own food. You finished your tasks. You waited. Millions of children matured in this exact environment. That cold brass key around a child's neck, it wasn't just a tool. It was a silent contract with the universe. A contract that said, no one is coming to help. And while it forged them into capable adults, it also left a mark, a quiet, heavy realization. You cannot always count on someone else showing up for you. That insight, it remains for life. That solitude did more than just build self-reliance. It hardwired their minds to understand the weight of consequences. When parents eventually returned, the boundaries were firm. If you overstepped a line, the penalty was immediate. There were no negotiations, no deep dives into emotional processing, no elaborate justifications for why you did what you did. Psychologists call this a high-stakes environment, a reality where every action triggers a direct, predictable outcome. This is why Gen Xers often appear to be strategizing 3 moves ahead. They learned to move through life like they're walking across a frozen lake, testing every step, listening for the sound of cracking ice before they ever commit their full weight. They grasped it early. Every choice carries its own gravity. At the same time, they watched as the adults promised security and then failed to provide it. They saw families dissolve. They watched dedicated employees get laid off after decades of service. They observed major institutions preaching one set of values while practicing another. They were told, work hard, respect the system, success will follow. And then, the landscape shifted completely. So Gen X didn't turn into wide-eyed dreamers. They became tactical planners. Not necessarily cynical, but definitely prepared. They developed the internal architecture of a shock absorber, built to take the hit of a collapsing system without letting the vibration reach their core. They learned to anticipate disruption. They learned to brace for impact. This mindset explains something people often mistake for coldness: their distance. Gen X isn't antisocial. They are simply
protective.
They grew up in an era where errors weren't etched in digital stone forever. Shame eventually faded away. It didn't go viral. Personal experiences remained just that, personal. To them, broadcasting your daily existence online doesn't feel like a thrill. It feels like a vulnerability. Privacy is a thick winter coat, and the more layers you strip away for the public to see, the faster you freeze in the wind of judgment. The less the world knows about you, the more secure you actually are. That is also the origin of their specific sense of humor, the satire, the cynicism, the way they poke fun at themselves. This isn't apathy, it's a shield. They grew up with a constant layer of background dread, Cold War alerts, nuclear drills, adults discussing global catastrophe while simultaneously telling kids not to worry. When the world feels volatile, but no one speaks about it plainly, you learn to maintain an emotional buffer, just in case. And yet, despite these defenses, Gen X built one of the most effective work ethics you will ever encounter. They don't market their productivity. They don't build personal brands around it. They don't lecture others on hustle culture. They just execute. Their careers started in their early teens, delivering papers before dawn, working cash registers without digital help. They shouldered professional weight long before they were ready. These weren't passion projects. They were survival exercises. They didn't build brands, they built foundations, pouring effort into the work until their hands were calloused and the structure was unshakable. They mastered competence long before they ever focused on confidence. They also observed the death of loyalty. They saw businesses discard people who had sacrificed years of their lives. So, Gen X pivoted. They stopped placing their faith in systems and started placing it in craftsmanship. They don't believe a company will protect them. They believe their own utility will. That is why so many of them have side projects or extra income streams. It's not for status, it's insurance. Here is the central paradox of the Gen X psyche. They are fiercely self-sufficient, yet remarkably dependable. They will never ask for assistance. They will solve the problem themselves. They've been doing that since they were children. But the moment someone else is in trouble, they show up. There is no public announcement, no request for credit, no digital performance. Why? Because that is how bonds were forged when the adults weren't around to supervise. Their relationship with authority follows the same logic. They don't give respect to titles. They respect results. If you are skilled at what you do, they are incredibly loyal. If you aren't, they disengage. They walk away immediately. This comes from watching leaders fail, politically, financially, and socially. They understood early on that having power does not mean you have wisdom. Financially, Gen X took one hit after another. Many started their adult lives in a recession. Others were just getting established when global crashes erased their progress. So they adjusted. Not through blind optimism, but through redundancy. If nothing is permanent, you stay ready for the end of the cycle. But this degree of self-reliance carries a price. Gen X is spectacular during a crisis, but they feel deeply awkward when they need to ask for support. Asking for help feels like trying to speak a language they never learned. It's a jagged lump in the throat that refuses to be swallowed. It's not because they lack friends. It's because needing help feels like a loss of autonomy. They were conditioned to handle things in silence. They also learned differently. Before the age of instant answers, information required effort. You hunted for it. You waited. You struggled to grasp a concept. That friction, it made the knowledge permanent. They fixed broken objects because that's just what you did. You didn't replace, you repaired. That hands-on approach birthed a deep conviction. Most obstacles are manageable if you remain patient long enough. Now they are raising children in a reality they barely recognize. Constant monitoring, permanent digital visibility, the endless documenting of every single milestone. They gave their kids exactly what they missed: total attention. But occasionally, they wonder what that trade-off cost. Because in their experience, remaining unseen, that was exactly how you stayed safe. Generation X doesn't claim to be better than anyone else. They are simply unique. They came of age in the cracks between worlds, after the old structures broke, but before the new digital order had stabilized. They are the infrastructure, and infrastructure rarely gets a standing ovation. They are the iron rebar buried deep inside the concrete, invisible to the eye, but the only thing preventing the world from crumbling under its own pressure. It just supports the weight, quietly, without ever asking if anyone noticed.